I want to briefly mention the genesis of this talk. We were visiting together with Andrea and Razib at the New York Encounter in New York City this past February. And we started a conversation sharing our experience with this new generation of tools of artificial intelligence, which are pervading already and our work in the universities. And so through conversation, it came out the opportunity to share my thoughts, my ongoing thoughts on this topic, and just exploring some of the interesting themes that these tools are prompting in our minds and in our work. In general, since we started to talk about this with Andrea Razib, of course, many things happened, and I want to just state that this talk is already out of date. This field is super fast, rapidly evolving, and already in the past probably 3-4 weeks, many things happen in this field that we never thought about would happen when we start first talking about it at the New York Encounter. So this is just to say that we are seeing evolution in this area day by day, as you can often see in the news, in the hundreds of articles happening in the news talking about generative AI and artificial intelligence. I wanted to start though, not from the present, but going even back 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when we started to see around 1997, 1998, the emergence with the web. If some of you could remember, I was an undergraduate student in Switzerland and I was studying how search engines worked. And we saw in 1997, 1998, the emergence of Google as a disruptive way to access and interface with the world of the web that was happening during those years. And so when we see those tools, as we will probably talk about today, one of the often quoted law of the history of technology by Melvin Kranzberg says, technology is neither good nor bad, nor it is neutral. So when we talk about technology, we cannot just talk about tools, but we talk about instruments that open possibilities for us and also shed light on what's possible and make other things recede in the background. So they're not neutral tools that we can use how we want. They are really services that shed light on things that were not possible before. And I remember when Google came out, often from colleagues, we were hearing already alarm bells going off. People saying, well, now we will use the ability to learn those skills which are really necessary to find things in the libraries, to learn how the catalogs of knowledge are organized. We will lose the vocabulary by which we can ask questions to experts. We will unlearn a lot of several skills that will help us to retrieve knowledge. So we will become dumber and dumber, and we will basically lose out in the search and processing of knowledge. And if you see now, what Google is 25 years now, it is already pervading this part of the fabric of our work. It's hard to find an aspect of our daily work, daily task, daily information task or knowledge task that does not rely on search engine or a service like Google with over 8 billion searches a day. So this is to say that rapidly or more slowly, oftentimes technology becomes part of our way of looking at things. And so, of course, we do not go as often to libraries, and we unlearn to browse catalogs in a way that before it was possible. But new possibilities have been opened, and new ways to access information have been made available. So when we think about AI, and the example of Google is apt, We've been using artificial intelligence already as user. We've been exposed. We are exposed to artificial intelligence for many years through the tools and the technologies that we use every day, right? So if you think about Google itself, the way it can generate such instant research results is through a number of AI engines that manage data and process data and index data in real time. If you think about Amazon, Alexa, Siri, even Google Maps, LinkedIn, how products are recommended to us, how we can browse the recommended videos. These very complex curation algorithms are based on artificial intelligence. And we don't even realize that we are relying on these powerful AI tools that work under the hood of all the services that we use every day. Another example is, as you've seen, auto-completion techniques, right? When you write emails and text, those engines know or they guess which word you're trying to write, even sometimes which sentence you're trying to write, and they suggest how to auto-complete your sentences. So these are all based on AI tools that have been around for a while and have been improving significantly over the past few years. But now, just in the past few months, something new has emerged at the eyes of everyone. This is what we call generative AI, a new kind of artificial intelligence, which in the past few months has been broadly and freely available to everyone, supporting a technology, a way of doing things that was not possible just 5-6 months ago. So instead of just talking about it, we can talk for hours. I just wanted to show you, if it works, how you can use these tools. If you go to OpenAI, blog ChatGPT, or you can just Google ChatGPT, you can Google with your own, you can access with your own Google account this tool called ChatGPT. So for 1 second, I will stop sharing my screen and I will open it up and we do some demo. So hopefully you can see this is the interface of this tool called ChatGPT, which is one of the many tools of this family of generative AI engines. So ChatGPT is a tool that allows, for example, to generate any kind of text. For example, we are Ergon Professional Club, so you can ask, provide some context. I mentor professionals to upskill their competencies and or find new jobs. What can you do for me? How can you help? And so it generates text, he answers questions, he provides ideas, content. So in this case, he can suggest upskilling resources, he can offer interview preparatory tips, he can assist with resume, cover letter. So you can say, okay, tell me more about this. Tell me more about resume. When it comes to effective resume writing, there are key elements to consider, and there are some kind of examples of guidance. So through what they call a language interface, this engine can generate text. For example, you are now an applicant, I'm a mentee of Ergon, and I want to apply for a job, and I want to have kind of a first draft of my job application. So write a job application. I can also do some misspelling, but he understands my intent. Write a job application for a job in the AI sector. Job application letter to an HR manager for a job in the AI sector. And then I can say, emphasize my soft skills, emphasize social intelligence, my prior experience in AI, communication skills, and maybe also eager to learn, and also I'm a team builder, team player. So then ChatGPT writes for me a first draft of a letter, for example, in this case, for a job, pretty generic, but it's a first draft. I can take it, I can nudge it and say, yes, but make it less generic, more punchy, less obvious, and actually shrink it by 50%, 30%. And then it generates as an AI professional with a new combination of technical skills, social intelligence. I'm excited to apply for job title, company name. I'm a strong communicator. But then you can say, okay, but I really want to nail down, this job. So what are some of the technical skills? You can say typically needed for an AI entry-level position. And ChatGPT, start generating a number of competence: programming, machine learning, NLP, some data analysis, computing, and then it gives me some advice. So, about what are some of the soft skills associated with these competencies? Communication, critical thinking, teamwork and collaboration, etc., etc. And we can go on and on and on. We can stop generating. You can try on your own. There are many other examples. You can use it for virtually any subject, any topic, and it spits out some text. My wife, for example, she's a third grade elementary teacher. And third grade is a key, very important grade to learn how to read and write. So if you don't learn how to read and write in third grade, 90%, there are very high chances that you will never learn, okay? So for writing especially, it's very important to give student examples of well-formed texts. And these texts are very difficult to find through books, through Google. They have a short text with an introduction, details, and then a conclusion on a number of topics. So you can use as a teacher to say, write for me 400 words text with text in at the level of a third grade with intro, details in the body, and conclusion. Intro, conclusion on any topic, on, for example, soccer, my favorite sport. And then he starts writing a third grade level text following my requirements, following my constraints, with the structure, which is the one that I want. And then I can say, well, the conclusions, typically third graders, their conclusions are very, very formulaic, very obvious. So you can say, write a less obvious conclusion, more insightful. And then he rewrites it. And if I don't like it, I keep nudging, I keep refining, etc. And then I say, do the same, write a similar text, but on baseball. And it does the same, etc., etc. Our students use ChatGPT more than the faculty. They use ChatGPT to write letters, to write emails. I oftentimes receive emails copied and pasted by ChatGPT. I start recognizing this text. But it's a very powerful engine that can be used for a variety of tasks, virtually for any topic. So before spending more time, I wanted to go back and share briefly how these engines work. what they are about. Let me see if I can. Here we are. We're back here. So how do they work? So this is a new generation of AI tools based on what are called large language models. You might have heard these terms, LLM, large language module. Basic functioning of these generative AI tools is that you train and you provide to a very complex software a massive amounts of texts. ChatGPT has been trained, has ingested 2 terabytes of text. It's still probably 1/10 of all the text of the US Library of Congress, but still is a lot. And these texts that have been trained, that have been given to ChatGPT to be trained on, they go up to 2021. So his knowledge is confined within that time boundaries. And then through what is called generative deep learning networks, this very complex software, the first thing that they try to do, this software is they try to produce text that is as close as possible, almost indistinguishable, to the real text that have been fed to it, okay? And then this attempt to generate this indistinguishable text is corrected, is continuously corrected by adversarial networks. So software that tries to correct what the discrepancies between the generated text and the original text. And this process is iteratively repeated until the software learns. Learns means that has crystallized a number of rules, patterns about how good texts are formed, okay? For example, ChatGPT uses over 170 billion parameters that basically are principles that explain to ChatGPT the patterns by which the text can be generated. If you, at the high level, if you want really a simplified understanding of what they do, these engines are basically very big auto-completion engine, super completion engine. Remember when we talk about Google, then starts writing your sentence? Imagine that super completion approach, that auto-completion approach at scale, not only at the word level, at the sentence level, but at the paragraph level, at the text level. And so basically it generates text by having learned which word or sentence is statistically more probable to follow, okay, given the context. The most interesting definition of what generative AI tools are come actually from the Federal Register, because the copyright office of the US government is having trouble figuring out how to deal with this new generative engine. Their definition is this: these tools are sophisticated AI technology capable of producing expressive material. We saw text, but there are generative engines that can generate visuals, images, arts, virtual reality, landscapes, videos. So all expressive material, which by the Copyright Office is any form of authored work, can be generated by these tools nowadays. This technology is trained on vast quantity of human author text and use inferences from that training to generate new content. Some systems operate in response to a user textual instruction called the prompt. So one of the things that you will notice as you use this tool is that, first of all, they received so much attention because millions of users started to use them in just a few days. So if you think about the technology adoption, it's been much faster than Instagram and Facebook, many times faster. But one of the things you notice is that these tools are extremely fluent in language, and not only in English. You know, I'm Italian, and they can write perfect Italian. You can try with any language and see where they go. You can test the boundaries. They're extremely fluent text generators on virtually any subject. They take requests in natural language and also try to give you the most relevant response trying to understand your intent. So the more you specify what you're trying to do, the more they provide you a relevant answer, right? Like in the example, I'm a mentor in an association, I would like to write a resume, et cetera, et cetera. So they try to understand some of the context behind the request and then produce well-formed syntax, wording, and flow. Since they're very powerful on language structure, they are also excellent correctors of language at any level. They can tune the style of the language, not only correct the grammar, of course, but tune, change the tone. If you look at the example I made of write a text for third grader, you can do it for any level, for any grade, right? How they are used, millions of people are using them, and there are, infinite use cases you can think of, but mainly to, provide ideas, solving problems. I was yesterday, my dishwasher broke, and there was a cap of the dishwasher that really fell off and couldn't attach anymore. I need to change it. And I had no idea what this cap of the dishwasher was. It's the cap of the box where you put that liquid that then it goes. So I asked ChatGPT, what's the name of the cap of the box where you put the jet dryer on my dishwasher? And he gave me the exact name and the exact model. I went on Amazon and I bought it. There was no way through Google to figure out what to search for, right? So the vocabulary to access knowledge. So creates content, gives you outlines on any topic. You can use it to provide an outline of a lesson on any topic, explain what generative AI tools are for first graders in 200 words, et cetera, et cetera. Write a lesson or write a course outline for an undergraduate program on this topic. They admit mistake. Sometimes they say, I cannot really do that. This is outside my purview as a generative engine. They sometimes admit error, but the possibilities are endless. So one of the capabilities you have seen is that since text really powers the value of our economy, of the service economy at any level, the generation of text content, but also visual content, it can speed up significantly the formulation of any message. So what would take me 1 hour, now it takes 5 minutes, and you can focus on other things. You can focus on communication, you can focus on what you want to say, to whom, et cetera, et cetera. And it can improve also daily because there is a human element, not only through our queries, but the founder of ChatGPT, the company OpenAI, keeps adjusting ChatGPT because all these, in the news, all the things come up about what it can do, what it cannot do. And so there is continuously human correction that can help improve these tools. So some current quality of the text I've observed is that good text. So it's rapidly generated, always very fast generated, well-formed. It's almost impossible. ChatGPT cannot produce grammarly incorrect text. It's very fluid, coherent at any level, syntax, sentence level, paragraph level, structure level, flow. And it is infinitely adaptable. In the example I made, shrink it 60%, expanded, tell me more, tell me less, change topic. You have seen in the news that this tool can generate also music notations, can write poems, can generate ideas, can also reason and compute, and also write programs in any language, not only in Java and C++, but only languages that do not exist anymore, like COBOL or Fortran. It's not always right, but it can generate code. There are also other qualities that we have noticed that at first, the more you use these ChatGPT services, you notice that the text starts to become kind of formulaic, always kind of impersonal, monotone. And so it's kind of easy sometimes to recognize it. I now recognize when students write me a ChatGPT generated email that haven't worked on it, that just took it and sent it to me. Because you start to recognize the usual formulas of the text, which are all correct, but it's hard to see the voice of the person who is speaking to you in the text. But it is also rapidly improvable. So if you spend some time with the prompts, with the right prompt, you can nudge ChatGPT to give you more of this, to emphasize the style, to give you more characteristic, more personality. And so there is a continuous improvement that can be done. So these are all the capabilities and powerful things that it can do. There are also, things which are a bit puzzling. And if you start using it, if you're not careful with what it's saying, sometimes it's a bit surprising. For example, many of you do research, work in academia, the professors, a common task we have is, well, I'm exploring a new topic in my research, and I want to know what are 5 or 6 key new research papers that have been published recently on this topic. And I want you to give me a literature review, a summary of the key insights of this paper. So in this example, you see in the screen, give me, 5 recently published papers on the topic of the accessibility. I work in the field of human AI, human-computer interaction. So the accessibility of these generative AI tools, specifically for people who are blind and visually impaired, they cannot see all the screens and prompts, but they use screen readers or other technology. Is there anything that has been studied? And he said, wow, yes, of course. Here are the summaries of 5 recently published papers. And he gives me 5 papers with a system for audio-based navigation and exploration of images for the blind impaired users. This paper assists an AI visually impaired to explore image using user-based navigation. The system uses generative AI model to generate NLP, blah, blah, blah. So title, author, proceedings, the conference, a summary. There is only one problem, that if you start looking for these papers do not exist. So ChatGPT generates content and generates papers which are plausible to exist, but they do not exist. Nobody wrote that paper. That paper has not been published. The authors' names may exist. The titles are very plausible. The summary makes sense, but that research has not been done. So this is very important to understand because, like Noam Chomsky says, a famous linguist that just published an article a few weeks ago in the New York Times about ChatGPT, there is an easy illusion that ChatGPT can lead us into believing that whatever they say, we take it for granted, it's true, and so we go with it, okay? So this is an easy trap, right, that are called AI hallucination. It gives you plausible facts, veritable facts, facts that really, really seem close to reality, but they're not true because they are intermixed with the fluidity of the text, other facts that are true. And so oftentimes you tend to mesh everything together or take it for granted. There is this veritable ocean of lies that it's really around the corner if we are not attentive at using these services for what they are. And what are these services? We have seen. We have to understand what they are not. So ChatGPT, for example, and these generative AI tools are not search engines. So a search engine, for example, takes document in real time or document that he has processed before and put this document in the big repository, brings up this document in an index with proper ranking like Google. You click on the document, you click on the link and you go to the source document, to the website. So in the search engine, there is a very clear, transparent connection always kept between what you access in terms of interface for the engine and the source content, right? So it's a door into the original content, right? The search engine. ChatGPT doesn't work like that. ChatGPT has already learned from terabytes of text. Now we don't know where those texts are. Those texts have been learned from, meshed, remeshed, and there is no access to those texts. So we do not know the origin of the knowledge of what ChatGPT tells us. in this sense, ChatGPT cannot know what is true, because ChatGPT has learned from text how language works, but it has no connection with the real world, no connection with reality, right? We have learned from St. Augustine that, true is adequatio reit intellectus, is the connection between language and reality. And ChatGPT has no such connection. So it doesn't know what's true. It doesn't know what it's telling is true or not. It doesn't know what is possible from impossible, what is right or wrong. You can go on, because it doesn't have a sense of morality. It's a piece of software, but can generate very plausible and convincing text. But text per se is not the reality. And that connection between text and reality is lost. Chomsky says what's probabilistically true, what's statistically probable, it's not necessarily true, right? So we have to be careful and fact check. Others say that ChatGPT, some doctors are saying, ChatGPT is very useful for us to write doctor notes and summary of the clinical work, but we have to supervise ChatGPT like we supervise a resident or a medical student. So it needs continuous supervision and fact checking. And ChatGPT is only one of the many generative tools that exist. There are families of generative tools now available that can generate, as I said, images, virtual world, games, videos. These are just some examples. This is a screenshot of a very famous generative AI engine that went on the news today, Midjourney, because people started to sue these companies because they recognized their own artistic style in the images that were synthetically generated. So as we think about this, I think there are some interesting questions, and I don't have at all the answers to this, but these are some interesting questions we've been thinking about also with our students and faculty. These tools are framed in a way that they provide they provide your first draft for any activity you're doing. You want to generate something, these tools provide you a first draft, a starting point. And then, of course, you're responsible for the work that you're going to deliver, that you're going to submit. But how these tools really impact or interact or intercept human creativity and originality in our work, because they start providing many of the elements of the craft that we thought were unique to our way of doing things, right? Another question, and these are just a list that we can stop here, but how is, for example, morality? These tools they don't have a moral sense, right? They are pieces of software, so they don't have a human responsibility or a morality. Is morality or awareness necessary for creativity, right? The intentionality of what is created, is it part of the creativity? Or the awareness of what is created, is it part of the creativity? Then there are some more practical, implications that we are grappling with in the university environment. How should the use of these tools be acknowledged in the work that we do? When we submit a paper, when we submit an assignment for a class, right? How do we need to acknowledge the use of this tool to say, I have used ChatGPT. We know that, for example, the Science magazine has banned the use of ChatGPT as a co-author of a paper. Why? Because this software cannot be responsible for the content, right? But they recommend and they ask the author acknowledge the use of ChatGPT or these generative tools in crafting their work. Another big question is, for example, if you look at human work, what are those elements which are irreducible no matter what the generative services can do? What are those elements? There are many other topics, and I want to stop just for the sake of time, but I leave you some of these questions that we've been thinking about. Chomsky says in his paper about the ChatGPT illusion that ChatGPT gives probable explanations based on prior text, but people are able to give improbable but insightful explanations. Things that can explain phenomena, but they're not necessarily probably derived by the text that comes before. So generating a thinking up hypothesis. I wanted to stop here. There are many other questions, and maybe open up to Andrea or to Razib if they want to lead some of the discussion, or if anybody has questions. I want to be respectful of the time.
Wow, thank you, Davide. That was really enlightening. I enjoyed the conversation a lot, and I think we already have some questions. So why don't we just go to the questions? So for the rest of us, if you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat, and we will try to have a kind of panel discussions with Andrea, Davide, and me, and anybody who wants to join. Okay, so let me just start with alerting some questions. So first question is, I think Lucas asked, so there was this banning of ChatGPT because of GDPR privacy, implying that if someone builds something using data knowledge that is on the web, it is almost akin to stealing. So how is ChatGPT using the data differently than the other, for which in some places it is facing some sort of ban? If you want to make a comment on that.
Yeah. So what's the question? How is?
So basically, I think the question implies that there is this. I think in Italy there's this banning of GPT-based software, because I think there is this issue of whether you are stealing the knowledge or not.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, in general, I've seen, and this is just one of the news, but I've seen several news also in other places, not only related to privacy, but also to the to stopping, banning, pausing. I think the genie is already out of the box, and I think it's a matter of understanding how to embrace those tools and understand the limitations. Then, of course, correcting as things go. But I'm impressed by the rapid adoption. So, yeah.
Okay. I think Carlos has an interesting point that I think. So what he was saying is that in terms of hallucination or the projection that this conversation that you're having with ChatGPT is factually accurate. I think Bing is trying to incorporate ChatGPT by adding references to the source that were used. So how do you think that helps in the overall credibility of the content that you're getting?
Yeah, I see two trends. One is this. So Bard, Bing, they are trying. Bard just came out recently. I've been using it the other day from Google. They are trying to provide more external references. So they're trying to really reach across the wall between language and reality. They try to build a bridge with an external reference, for example, for publications and things. Bing, for example, is doing that more. The other trend I'm seeing is now ChatGPT is coming into Microsoft Office, right? So ChatGPT has been funded by OpenAI. OpenAI received millions of dollars of investment for Microsoft. Microsoft have seen ChatGPT rising and has now integrated the ChatGPT technology in Microsoft Office that will become available soon, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, with the big one major improvement that really, I think, tackles the hallucination problem. The technology that Microsoft is using is called Copilot. It's basically ChatGPT for Office, but the source of the data that Copilot uses are your documents, your files, right? So ChatGPT in that case, it's used, the technology is grounded into real world data that exists that you can control. And so there is a kind of, won't be perfect for sure, but there is an attempt to bridge the gap between language and reality, which I think it's a very important one.
Cool. Okay, I think, let's see. I mean, we can ask, I think Carlos wanted to ask or maybe join the conversation in person. So I'll just unmute him for a while. Okay.
Thank you. So I've pasted some of my thoughts on the chat for others to follow, but I'm now thinking how every technology has a deep effect in thought, language, culture, society. And, you know, given the past 25 years, we now know beyond doubt how that technology that was launched impact all of these aspects. We even start to see some mea culpa from, you know, founders and creators of that technology, especially in social media. And Neil Postman used to say that the inventor of technology is usually the worst person when it comes to predicting the effects of its invention. So I see that we now might have a once in a lifetime chance to shape this intellectual tool in a desired direction, you know, predict the undesired effects, mitigate the negative ones. What do you see as, you know, opportunities here? And in a way, there's even the question, like, can anything be done? Because as you said, it feels like the genie is out of the bottle. Everyone is already doing a lot. And because the opportunity seems so huge, no one wants to waste time thinking about consequence if that will mean losing opportunities. And in your experience, there are people that you know or initiatives in that direction?
Yes, excellent question. I for sure don't have the answers, but these are exactly the questions that I have as well. I was talking to Zaib. We are in academia. Of course, academia is grappling with understanding how to deal with this, right? And we are already behind. Our students are ahead. We are behind 5-6 years with policy. Stanford, for example, has released the policy guidance that I think it's the first university that I've seen that releases such a clear policy guidance. Of course, these policy guidance are very temporary. Policy guidance from Stanford says, especially to regulate the use of ChatGPT in teaching and learning for students, says the resorting to AI engine, like generative engine, is analog to asking people for help, which means that within the context of a classroom, if you give an exam and the rules say you cannot ask other people for help, ChatGPT falls in that category, right? So that's one way in which we understand, because we understand both the limitation and the power of these tools, we need to be able to circumscribe, right, the use and the circumstances based on the goals and the constraints and the needs that we have for a given situation, for a given scenario. So I think having a situated approach is very important, because this technology, when they are generic, generalizable, it's very hard to understand what the boundaries are. But within a given circumstances, for example, in academia for teaching, learning, for education, things needs to be looked at in that light, I think.
I think Renzo has a question. Renzo, if you want.
Yeah, I have a comment and possibly a question. You mentioned your third grade essays, but you know, there is an epidemic in college where a lot of students are using ChatGPT to produce their work. I spoke to several college professors and they say that that's almost an epidemic. But anyway, I am in the biomedical science field, and what I see is that there is already a huge uptake of AI in my area. This week, right or wrong, the New England Journal of Medicine, which is, again, right or wrong, considered to be the most authoritative medical journal, announced that they are launching in 2024 a separate journal that is totally dedicated to AI in medical biosciences. And this is happening already today. You mentioned the physician note. I was at my physician today. He said 2 or 3 words in the dictaphone, and at the end of the visit, I got a fully organized account of what happened to me. Then what happens in diagnostic is very important. And here again, that raises some question for me, because for instance, in radiology or in imaging diagnostics, but also in pathology, what they are using are large numbers of a database that will be the comparator against which your own image, your own sample is tested. To me, I mean, I accept the power of numbers, but it's very reminiscent of the Russian army approach, where you have the power of the numbers, but you actually have alluded to the fact that there is a source of text issue here. Because again, we don't necessarily know where these comparators come from. But that brings me to the last point and to the question. And again, this is being used in research. And in my experience, maybe I'm old, several of the most significant discoveries that came out in medical biosciences were coming out from the observation of the unknown, or if you want, the expectation of the unknown, okay? And I wonder whether the diagnostic approach that I alluded to before, by which the numbers create a background that becomes the dominant point of view, the dominant truth, and so on. That to me creates a little bit of uneasiness.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know your opinion about that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, these are great topic. I would say you are mentioning, the approach you are mentioning, you know, from quantity to diagnostic it's the inductive approach, right? Induction approach, right? So, and these tools are very good at induction because they can anticipate consequences based on antecedents, right? The other approach, which they are actually very good at, is the deductive approach, which is from a general topic, they can reduce the details, reduce it to practice. They can identify details and specificities, particulars from the general. What they tend not to do so well, I would be cautious to say that I've seen articles that say they cannot do this third one that I'm about to tell you, but I'm always cautious to say what they cannot do. What I am not seeing they do very well now is the abductive approach. Okay, abduction is generating an hypothesis that explains the facts, right? And that's the source of originality research. And so the deductive, I have some slide because this is a very interesting topic that goes back to the abductive approach is very hard to generate because the abduction is not a consequence of the antecedents, and it's not derivable, reducible from the generalities. So for example, here, it's a matter of what is creativity, right, Enzo? So is creativity establishing new connections with reality, right? That's one definition. Or taking very distant domains or matrices, right, which are not reducible to each other and somehow combining them in new ways. Or, for example, uncovering new territory, you know, the hypothesis, in a way which is irreducible to what comes before. And so if you ask this question, I think this engine have a hard time explaining how this could work. This seems to be very interesting because it captures some of the uniquely human elements that are really at the I would say on the front door of the mystery, right? Anyway, I stop here. I don't want to talk too much.
Okay, I think this sounds wonderful. Let's see. Do we have any other questions from anybody? Oh, this may be a little bit maybe not quite there, but so in terms of, let's say, inclusion of ChatGPT in the legal system, how do you know what is probable and what is reality and what is the legal limit? I mean, can you even use it into the legal system?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, so I cannot really say that. But I'm sure that lawyers are using it extensively, are using this tool extensively to draft arguments, logics, write documents, write letter, review material, summarize, analyze. So wherever services are rely on text structure, argumentation, these tools are extremely powerful and very useful. Of course, I would say always supervised, right? Supervised, trained, nudged properly. A very interesting skill, I would say, that will be very, very important for the future of our society as we interface with these tools will be centered around the ability to write effective prompts. There are already jobs coming out, prompt engineering, prompt design. What are prompts? Prompts are sophisticated ways to ask the right questions for these tools so we can get useful answers, but also understanding the limitations, right? So I'm sure lawyers are using it. In terms of law, if you're interested in the copyright law, recently the US Copyright Office has released the human authorship requirements guidance because they're having trouble figuring out how to copyright work that has been produced with the assistance of generative AI. So if you look at the guidance, the link is there to the Federal Register that just came out in March about how they're thinking about copywriting tools, copywriting work which is AI generated or a fruit of a human AI partnership. For example, they say that if you look here, when an AI technology determines the expressive elements of its output, the generated material is not the product of human authorship, so they cannot copyright it. In other cases, however, a work containing AI-generated material will also contain sufficient human authorship to support the copyright claim. For example, a human may select and arrange AI-generated material in a sufficiently creative way, and the resulting whole will constitute original work of authorship. So these are some examples. Also, some prompts can be copyrighted. So this goes back to prompt design, sophisticated prompt design. The prompts could be sufficiently creative, or the chain of prompts. The architecture of the prompts could be sufficiently creative to be copyrighted, so they can become work to be protected. Anyway, this is moving around, so I want to stop here.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Davide. I think this was a great conversation that we had, and I think we had a lot of participation from the audience about these discussions. I think we can continue the discussion, but we are unfortunately out of time. So thank you everyone for joining with us today.